All right, everybody. Welcome to District Pittsburgh Master Brewers presentation for today. First of all, we want to thank Andrew and the craft beer professionals for having us today. We really appreciate it, especially in tough times like this. It's good to get everybody together and talk a little beer. Just some quick introductions before we get started with things. My name is Adam Kubala, and I am the treasurer for District Pittsburgh. I've been the treasurer since we were incorporated in 2018. Which Marcus will go into a little bit more later, which leads me into my other introduction and to the main speaker for today, Marcus Cox, the other person with me. Marcus is the vice president for District Pittsburgh. He has also been with us since the inception of this new district. So with that, I'll turn it over to Marcus.
Thanks, Adam. We're going to quickly scroll through. If you want to keep it moving with the slides, Adam, please.
Sure, yep.
So just a really quick background on the Master Brewers Association of the Americas, a somewhat arcane institution founded in Chicago in 1887. We're from Pittsburgh, and this district was first founded in 1910. Post-Prohibition, it got another kind of reboot in 1935. It went pretty well for a while, and then it kind of fell away relatively recently, and we had the opportunity to revive it, so to speak, in February 2018. So just a point of reference on this front page before we leave it, which is gone, that's fine.
Yeah, we're back.
Some of the focus today is going to be on kind of old world institutionalized knowledge versus what has to be done today. And if you can take note that document there from the opening period of the Master Brewers is in German as opposed to American English, so quite strange. Adam, let's roll. There's a bit of a separation between the national and the district level. So again, to kind of reference how the Master Brewers Association works, there's a national body that guides how things work and offers a form at the national level, but they pretty much just supervise various districts around the country. As part of that, District Pittsburgh had an agenda, and that agenda was to have 4 in-person meetings per year. And they were meetings that consisted of technical presenters coming in, and beer and fun and learning, but mainly 4 in-person meetings is really the focus. With us recently refounding the district, the attendance for these meetings was somewhat underwhelming, and that was based on a number of factors. We don't have an anchor brewery, so as far as I can tell, Iron City hadn't brewed in Pittsburgh proper since 2009. Mm-hmm. Our district that we had the pleasure of cutting ourselves out of Western Pennsylvania extends all the way up to Erie, to Lake Erie and Erie on that lake. Somewhat challenging to get those people to come to Pittsburgh and the people from Pittsburgh and in between to go up. So we really didn't get a lot of people turning up. I just covered the 4 points at once. That was good out of sequence. So yes. You get the idea. We're a nationally supported organization. We're a local district, though, that has the capacity to set our own agenda within the parameters of the national, and we found ourselves really struggling. So back some time ago, after the founding and refounding in February 2018, we'd already kind of viewed digital delivery as an option for presentations. Given that we're closer to Ohio than we are to Philadelphia, given that we had a line that pretty much divides the state down where straw brewing is, and they fall on our side, we'd looked into digital delivery as a real option. Moving on to the next slide, please, Adam. Then we found this guy. So we'd done a lot of meetings, or a number of meetings before this, to fill that quota I mentioned of 4 in-person meetings per year. And they weren't really working out so well for us, and they tended to be focused very much on technical presenters. So we would get Mr. Yeast from the yeast company to talk about very specific technical aspects of yeast, or we'd get Mr. Malt from a malting company, for example, in Holland, to talk about malting in a very specific way. that wasn't really working out for us. So we decided to do something a little bit different. And the date for this, off the top of your head, Adam, was about when?
April of 2019.
Thank you. We decided just to go for a big name, a marquee name, and we decided to get this guy down and use this as a revenue generating exercise that would fund us for a year. And he basically came to Pittsburgh. We did a pre-gamer with him with some media, which was fantastic exposure for the district at Penn Brewery. And then we moved on to, I'm not going to attempt to say the name in German. I'm really bad, but the local German club. I'm sure, Adam, if you could step in with the correct pronunciation.
As far as I know, it's Teutonia Manorcore.
Yeah.
And they've been there, longer than Penn Brewery.
So 100 years plus, 120 years plus.
For sure.
Yeah. So, we tied it all together. Sam came down very generously. We had some really good sponsors, and we had a couple hundred people in the room with him. And it was a very anecdotal presentation. It was very much him talking about being Sam. And to be honest, that worked well. We made a bunch of money on the door. Everybody made money. He was happy to hang out. I got to be his handler for the night, which was very interesting. And it went on from there. So that's what it looked like on the face. We made some money and these things happened. But in the background, there were some other things happening. So we received quite a lot of sponsorship for this. So again, looking at this as the thing that was basically going to fund us for a year as a Master Brewers District, we got Dogfish Head funding via the distributor. We also had some kick in from a local tour company that does brewery tours called City Brew Tours. And we also got some funding from a brewery raw materials supplier called LD Carlson out of Ohio. So we were raking the money in. We had everybody there. It wasn't particularly technical, which was challenging. And that's kind of where it gets a little bit interesting. So part of the primary charter of the Master Brewers is to be a technical organization, but that is at counter to the idea of having a broad attendance. So we found that we basically sold our souls for this one. It was very exciting, but it wasn't something that was sustainable to remain within the parameters. And we also had an excellent after party. Sam really knows how to rock. So that went pretty well for us. So that's an example of one of the kind of befores that we did. And then we thought that went pretty well. We've got some money in the bank now. Let's get somebody else that's relatively popular. Let's look at expanding the audience beyond just people that kind of have a passing interest in beer. Try and rein things back in, at least to some degree, to a technical position. And in order to do that, we engaged Ashton Lewis, who, again, back to technical with this presentation. And Ashton has a couple of hats that he wears. He was involved in a brewery for a long time, but people probably know him as a kind of technical consultant sales avatar for BSG, Brewer Supply Group. And he's also known as Mr. Wizard in BYO magazine. So we keep things technical, but at the same time, we're trying to expand the market beyond just one thing I didn't mention, just the 60 members that District Pittsburgh has directly. If we just relied on the 60 members of District Pittsburgh to turn up every time, it would be the same rodeo every time. So what we tried to do, a lot of presenters, and I appreciate how difficult it is to generate a presentation after trying to throw this together in 10 minutes. They have basically a touring bag of stuff that they present. And we decided to take it up a notch and engage Ashton specifically with a unique presentation request, with a unique concept that Adam and myself and the other officers of the MBAA designed. And it was basically something that harked back to a lot of our childhoods, where the choose your own adventure books were quite the thing. When did we do this one, Adam? I'm assuming if I look really hard at the date.
So this was middle of January this year. So right before everything kind of started to change for us. So
yeah. So we threw him the idea, and he was familiar with the books, that let's give people the capacity to basically make a beer live, make a beer recipe and a beer process live, but to do it inside a set of limited parameters. And he designed the limited parameters, so everybody thought they had their way with things, but they really only had 4 choices each time. And he came up with the background, the skeleton to do that, and guided people through that in person at Oryx Brewery in Pittsburgh. And that went fantastically well. And we thought this is probably as good as one of these events is going to get. To give some background, moving over to the next slide. Once again, there was obviously a fantastic after party. That might have even been the before party. So another click, please, Adam. After having done these very technical presentations prior to Sam Keller-Jones and leading up into this one with Ashton, we really felt that we didn't know, speaking just about our members, what the audience knew, what the members knew. Again, coming back to the fact that there isn't a big brewery in the area, and a lot of people aren't particularly technical. All of the breweries you know about that are in Pennsylvania are in the middle or on the other side of the state. We have a lot of small breweries that are independently run and independently kind of monitored. It's challenging. So working out what those people needed. So we specifically tried to use the development of this presentation and the feedback from it as a barometer to get a sense of what future presentations would look like. So we identified there was a problem engaging, and we decided, as seems to be the thematic through a lot of what I'm going to say in the next 18 minutes, broader appeal was the preferred appeal. And again, thanks to BSG for sponsoring this one. Obviously, Ashton works for them, so we'll give it a shoe in. Moving on, Adam. Yep, click.
Yeah, sure.
So then we reach the point where COVID kicks in, or the early kind of feelings that something wasn't right kicked in. And at that point, obviously, these in-person meetings that we're committed to are gone. And we already started to do some infrastructure work for online. And we decided that, without a doubt, online was the way of the future. We very generously received some grant money from the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board to do the in-person meetings, and we effectively spent the last of that money, or at least the last viable money of that amount of that money, to buy a Zoom license, which was really back then the only available platform that could handle 100 to 200 people.
And I'll interrupt you real quick here. As we were really lucky that we were even able to afford that Zoom license. Basically, because of our nonprofit status, we were able to get that license at 50%. So that really, even that little, not I would say a little bit of help, but that kind of piece of it even just made all of this possible. So even without that, we would have been, I think, even more of a difficult position than we were, just barely being able to afford that just because of the nonprofit status.
Thanks, Adam. And then to go back to the theme of the kind of, other than, trying to define that we need a broader audience, it was a really good opportunity for us to define for whom are we providing these presentations and why are we providing them. And one of the broader concepts that we'd thrown around at that point was that it's no longer 30 people standing in a room drinking beer, listening to some academic talk. I mean, that can happen sometimes, but it's going to be Zoom-based. It's going to be people at their homes or at their workplaces. We're going to extend this beyond the normal membership of the District Pittsburgh Master Brewers, and we're going to at least extend it nationally to everybody. And as we soon learned, we would be extending that beyond those boundaries as well. So then we found this guy. So one of the interesting things in this period, which is about when, Adam, in terms of date?
So the first webinar was May 16th of this year.
Yes.
So we really went 4 months, kind of trying to figure it out. And then middle of May is when it started to come together.
Yeah. So one interesting thing that happened is we committed to a presentation every 2 weeks. So we were kind of, we had the knife on the stone there. So anyway, one thing that was really prescient about this was that we worked out that a lot of these presenters, not to say they didn't have a lot to do, but they could find time to present for us. As we did with Sam, and as we did with Ashton, we could get some really high-level presenters. And obviously John Palmer, big name again, the man that knows everything about water, amongst other things. And we got him to hook up for our first webinar with the Zoom base. He did a variation of his classic water presentation. And let's keep it moving.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, click.
Sure.
Again, we enforced that open door policy that had been an idea before that actually came through as a reality. And John Palmer. So the way these two slides work is, for example, the one that you just saw was the stuff that was happening in the front of house. And then the second slide pertaining to that particular presentation is maybe some of the back of house stuff that isn't so obvious. So one of the things that happened again is BSG sponsored, very happy to do things for us. A more interesting thing that happened was that John Palmer had done a lot of work with a chemical analysis company called Lamott, and he actually designed a water testing kit. So in order to bring this presentation in that he couldn't be at in person, Lamott very generously via realbeer.com sent us one of the test kits, and we did analysis at 4 different points in Pittsburgh and then standardized that to an average so that when John was talking about water, he was talking about Pittsburgh water, which while we're looking for a broader audience, it was a really nice way to tie it back to the base. No boundaries at this point, so we'll take anybody from anywhere. And at that point, we knew we had people coming from all kinds of places. For example, Adam, just throw a few names out, please.
So we had folks in South Korea. The one that always stuck with me was North Macedonia, all over the continental United States, Mexico, India, New Zealand. Really, to say international is not an understatement. It was, pretty much every continent that has people living on it. So
cool. All right, let's keep it moving. So then we engaged Liz Pratt, and she's a sensory specialist. And we decided to get a little bit clever here and try and do a 2-part presentation, one by Liz and one by somebody else down the track. And the pertinent issue that was attached to this was that we were looking at doing some really basic sensory for people that had beer lying around that would probably have to go to market again. Let's move on, Adam. She's currently based in Holland, in the Netherlands, and works for Oedipus Brewery. We were sponsored by Malt Europe. She actually presented from this floating barge that she lives on in a canal in the Netherlands. So we really felt like we'd nailed the international vibe at this point. It was a technical presentation, but it was very accessible. And we still hadn't quite hit the right mix with content. We were looking at having super technical, then not technical, but at this point we realized we were a little bit challenged. So moving on to the next one, Adam. No, what can possibly go wrong when Mitch Still's presenting? Basically nothing. Everybody's read his book. Everybody's had the beers. He's obviously in charge of his own show now at the 2 sites. It was basically a really good mix of his general presentation, which is based on the book, IPA Evolution. It was technical meets historical. So lots and lots of numbers about beer, lots and lots of kind of anecdotal comments about how to make beer. And obviously Mitch, as a brewer, was very good about bringing those aspects together into modern play. So that's what it looked like on the face. BSG sponsored yet again. They're very generous people. At this point, we worked out that the money from the door and stuff, we weren't making money off these, and we were getting pretty good interface off the sponsors. So we decided to try a different interface this time with BSG. And what we specifically did, which was pretty cool, between Grant from BSG, myself, and Mitch, we went through his book and we worked out that White Shield IPA was probably the best beer from the book that we wanted to make. And BSG very generously offered the credits to 2 commercial breweries to make a X barrel batch of that, or to directly supply to 2 home brewers to make that beer at home. So it was pretty cool. We obviously had the broad attendance of both professional and amateur brewers, as well as other people that just like reading about beer. But having that specific door prize thing really tied it together with those people being able to make the beer afterwards. And it kind of, I felt good about taking sponsorship for once. This one really, obviously with Mitch and his kind of extreme popularity with a very specific market and owning California at the, back with Stone, the Q&A was just incredible. So it just went on and on and on, and it was very satisfying stuff. And the people that actually won the door prizes were the 2 home brewers and the 2 professional brewers that asked the most interesting questions, that drew the most interesting answers out of Mr. Steele. And at that point, we knew that charging people for these things in any capacity was completely gone. And we effectively moved from, generating revenue with these to trying to disseminate information and looking at other ways to self-fund in order to share this stuff as an open book. We moved on, and again, some of the caliber of some of these presenters, or all of them, to be honest, is just mind-boggling. But this one really stands out. She, if any component of her resume was presented as opposed to the whole thing, it'd still blow your mind. So Lindsay Barr, history with New Belgium, doing a lot of work with sensory there, doing a lot of work with the ASBC, the American Society of Brewing Chemists. She was the subcommittee chair there for a long time. So this was effectively sensory part 2 to Liz Pratt's part 1. And one of the most incredible things about this is that Lindsay had spent a lot of time developing an application for phones, for smartphones, called Draft Lab. And what it allowed us to do was, she nominated a beer, obviously with her background at New Belgium. It was Fat Tire. She's not working for them anymore. We all got some of that, and we went online and used our app to basically draw the flavor, categorize the flavor of that beer in isolation. So if you wanted something that was perfect for the times, that was it. So this was a really good example of practical, technical. So you'll start to see this technical, practical, practical, technical pattern repeated. And that's because we found that was the soft spot that we really wanted to hit, where there were some actions that people could do, but also still reinforcing that dogma of the MBAA that it had to be technical. Next, please, Ed. So there's a kind of skewed screenshot there, but we also started to do this thing where we traded sponsors for presentations, but also Lindsay very generously gave us access to the app for the day. Moving through. And if there was ever anything we ever did that was built for isolation, it was get a can of Fat Tire, log into this presentation, you get 35 minutes of background, 15 minutes of tasting, online with the app, 10 minutes of debrief. And at this point, we're not charging. And at this point, if you know how to use a computer and can type, take me there, it's happening. It was a remarkable experience. Then we get this guy. So the fun just keeps happening. And Dana was a particularly fun guy. He's got what sounds like a relatively boring job. He designs and sells chemicals for a chemical company that mainly makes their money doing something else, but has a very passionate commitment to providing chemicals and designing processes for brewing stuff. So this was back a little bit more to a full technical presentation, but with this guy's charm, it just kept it moving. He did have one of those kind of suitcase, briefcase, stock standard presentations that a lot of this level of presenter has. We asked him to tailor it a little bit. So at the time, there was a lot of panic about CO2 shortages. And there was also a lot of challenges with beer sitting around in tanks for a little bit longer, bright tanks in particular. So he also had some very advanced methods for getting DO down through process, and the bright tanks in particular. And obviously that would give you better longevity if the beer had to sit around for longer while you were closed. So as per the thing we did with Draft Lab, with Lindsay, with Dana, we offered them naming rights at the presentation. We also started doing a lot more advertisements via Facebook and some other means. So we actively started paying for populating those ads. As I said, if you go into Burko's website or have a look and contact Dana, he's very accessible personally. The stuff that he talks about, washing kegs with acid, washing bright tanks with acid under pressure, and it kind of some of the sundry processes of that he didn't really go into, but closed loop processing, you're going to use less CO2 and you're going to save the beer from being exposed to oxygen. It's very, I've jumped ahead obviously with some previous comments, but using a method that already exists, but with a changing situation, to really, cover yourself. And I mean, we basically don't use any CO2 where I work at Mindful. We get the tank filled every 4 weeks, and it's all closed loop transfers, and it's all spunding. And it's my mindset's very amenable with the ideas that the guys from Burgo have. And again, it was free and it was completely open access. So again, the theme continues. Then this is one we actually booked in really, really early. And it's a good one. So we had Roger Kissling, and he's VP customer management with a company called Ironheart, and they're predominantly active in the northeast of the country. We use them at Mindful. We have them come in with mobile canning, and their presentation was on the fundamental components of quality canning, and it talked both about obviously mobile canning, but just canning in general. And we had a couple of people on the panel there that were local Pittsburghers that are involved in canning that were very helpful with their input. But I mean, what was the date for this one, Adam?
So this was the last one on July 25th of this year.
So at that point, aluminum was getting a little bit tight. There were some other things happening, but it wasn't panic stations. This is when, right before everybody started to move to canning. And at the time, this was incredibly like a perfectly schism, well-timed resource. Let's go across. The enthusiasm, as I said, one of the amazing things that happened, and I'm assuming it still does, but maybe it's going to dilute over time. We also got Tyler Willie, who's the president, founder of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So he jumped on and co-presented, which was an amazing experience. As I said, this was a little bit earlier than the explosion to go to canning. Once again, it was a lot of technical stuff. It went into financial stuff, which we normally don't do, but it seemed appropriate. And it was an inherently practical presentation. And again, it was free and it was an open door, and anybody that could use the computer could get on there. And we'd started to play around with streaming on Facebook as well, probably this one or the one before. Okay, so just a quick look at that. I'm half blind, so I can't really see these things. That's basically the timeline. I described 2 of the 3 last presentations we had before the COVID kicked in, and then the 6 subsequent ones that became the cycle that we do through that period that ended in July. Yeah. Mm-hmm. As I said, amazing names, pretty crazy stuff, and all these people turned up and they all presented particularly well. Next slide, please, Ads. So that's deliberately upside down. I'm trying to be clever that we turn the MBAA on its head. Probably not. They provide the binding every day that kind of holds us together. As I said, the national part of the Master Brewers provides the guidance and the formula and the infrastructure. Us as a small district get to have a lot of flexibility. But we did find that they were inherently stoic organization, so hard to change. We tried to push them for a couple of things from the district level up, and it was very challenging. And they got there in the end, or they're getting there, but it was very slow. So we thought that part of the learnings that we took away from this is that a small district with a handful of people as officers, 50 to 60 members, depending on when you clock the membership, is a much more dynamic way to react to these situations. So operating at that grassroots level, happy to take a chance and roll the dice. And if you blow your last $1,000, it's gone. To be honest, it's bad luck, and at least you tried. We ended up coming out of this with a new model where it's accessible to all, and it's a new version of that grassroots local district. So we're still working inside the parameters of the national charter, still working inside that parameter set, but we're really looking at reaching out to people that aren't members, people that will probably never be members, some will, home brewers, people that are interested in brewing, people that are interested in reading about beer, and obviously people that are super technical. It's not the current kind of inclusive model, but it's when the master brewers is specifically supposed to be about having some Poindexter sit on a bench and talk about something that only two people in the room understand. That works most of the time, but we felt we had to open up and be a little bit more aggressively engaging. So that's probably coming towards the end of it, and 31 minutes was pretty good time. And I started talking fast, so that probably helped. Just a bit of a heads up. So what this is something that we're doing, being the Master Brewers District Pittsburgh. We're putting together another presentation after this. So this has been a nice kind of consolidating thing that summed up everything that we did in the transitional period between the 2 or 3 last in-person presentations, the 6 webinars that we did, and how we improved on those and started to develop a model. We're looking at November 16th this year as putting together a 1-day set of presentations based on 4 concepts. One of them's words, where we're going to engage published authors that obviously write about beer. One's more of a technical thing to hit that keynote for MBAA requirements. So, much more technical and deep. One of them's space, and I'm not sure how clear the graphic is, but we've partnered with the local Pittsburgh Brewers Guild, and they're going to present that, or they're going to sponsor that and offer the panel for it. So they'll be talking more about tap rooms and marketing and just kind of keeping the sales and the human side of things alive on that end. And then the North Cardinal Point comes through as finished product. So it brings back in those tasting elements, and it brings everything downstream of brewing. So, bright tank onwards to coming out of the tap, there'll be the areas covered there. So we're putting together a day session there that should, again, hopefully build on today being a consolidation of those presentations we've previously done. And from today, we're looking forward to doing this presentation, which obviously looks forward to 2021. So that's going to be it for the content. Hopefully we can move over to questions if that's available.
Yeah, so can you, I'll keep our presentation up here, just if anybody wants to reach out to us and check us out on Facebook. There at the bottom, we have the link. So if you can, Marcus, if you're able to field the questions there. Yep. I can't see if there are, or what there are or not. So
I've got the comments open, and
sure.
Yep.
So, just thinking about some of the things that Marcus said, it really became about, leveraging, the technical aspects against, the broader appeal. And for me, the digital aspect of it kind of solved in some ways that appeal problem. We found that with some of the technical presentations, they were very helpful to, 1 or 2 people in the room. But for some of the other folks, they had other things that they knew, or they weren't, dealing with those kind of issues at the scale that they were dealing with. So regardless of the focus of the presentation, the online aspect allowed us to get it to the people that it was the most relevant to, which they said, which is something that we kind of struggled with. And I think something that I imagine a lot of districts struggle with is, finding a presentation sweet spot where it keeps people interested, but also doesn't, go over too many folks' heads. So the digital really kind of provided that platform for us.
We also had, based on where the people were coming from and their backgrounds and their feedback and follow-up emails, we actually had a really good tracking on who was paying attention, looking at them drop in and drop out, and going back and seeing who they were was very helpful.
Yeah.
And then it also helped to build maybe some future work for us as well, in as much I mentioned very briefly that we'd received previously a grant from the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, and we managed to receive another one of those this year that will help to fund us in 2021, and that's primarily COVID-based stuff. So we're fully committed to digital space, fully committed to delivering beer to people for these tastings and using apps like Draft Lab. We're fully committed to building a central analysis point. I don't want to say a lab, but a central place in Pittsburgh where people can drop off samples hands-free and get results emailed to them with microbiological data or other analytical stuff. That's all being funded by PLCB, the liquor board here. And we've also, as a corollary of the stuff we've done over the last 6 months, become very good friends with the guys at Point Park, one of the colleges here, one of the universities here. And hopefully they'll be able to get a course up and running next year that we'll have some participation in terms of tuition, getting people off the ground, starting to brew as a summer course. So there are the direct effects of the people that watch the presentations, and then there are these kind of knock-on effects where we can pick up some other stuff as well and help at a kind of broader position.
Yeah, and I think some of what you're speaking to there, I think, kind of goes to the point that we saw this void or challenge, for lack of a better word, kind of early on in 2020, and not to get on a high horse too much, but it kind of seemed that some of the other organizations in the country, and even probably some businesses as well, were kind of, I think, reluctant to accept the inevitable. And it kind of just seemed obvious almost to us, for lack of a better word, to imagine that this was going to continue certainly through 2020. And now, it feels like it's continuing through 2021. So I think some people turned kind of a blind eye to some of these issues and hoped that they could go back to in-person meetings, within a few months. And, I think partly because we were focusing on going digital and trying to, broadcast some of these things to our members, we already sort of had an eye towards that. But, we kind of just jumped in.
We were very bad at doing the in-person meetings, and we're moderately okay at doing the digital ones. So for us, it actually would have been a preference anyway. Is the bottom line.
Yeah, and it really just removed a lot of barriers in terms of access to presenters, access for attendees. Obviously, as Marcus covered in the presentation, but more to highlight that the way we got this done is we did it. We looked and said, who is out there, who can we contact? And they kind of just kind of fell into place, which is not to say that it wasn't a lot of work. But, everything just kind of seemed to fall in line. Like Marcus said, the digital things, now the Point Park thing and beyond to 2021. So it was, it was nice that it had a sort of easy sequence to it.
I mean, even to the point where we made, I'm not going to say we made friends, but the district Pittsburgh Master Brewers and the local Pittsburgh Brewers Guild run at different tangents. So the Pittsburgh Brewers Guild is affiliated with promoting business, and the Master Brewers is something where individuals are specifically members. And we had a lot of time where we tried to align those needs, and it's really come together in the last couple of months. Again, as a result of these online presentations, the webinars, and it's going to manifest fantastically well at the presentation on November 16th.
And I think, like I said, even going beyond just, this foundation that we're putting together, not to say that we're revolutionizing things, but, I think, even beyond 2021, this is going to be the preferred method for a lot of folks for a long time. So, we're good.
And yeah, I mean, the one of the points is that Adam and I and our colleagues aren't particularly good at this. So that, if we threw $1,000 at it and made it go this well, everybody else should be able to do something probably better.
it's the people are, especially over this last year, and again, I think coming to 2021, people are looking for ways to break the monotony, kind of break the quarantine, for lack of a better word. So it's really just about reaching out to folks. It's a great community. People are almost always willing to help at little to no cost. So like Marcus said, if we can do it on a shoestring budget, I think then anybody can. So,
yeah, I mean, the main cost was our committed labor as volunteers, and everything else, just kind of happened.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm guessing we thought we're going to run out of time, but it looks like we've got 5 minutes too much. So it's probably a good time to play a Dragon Force song or something.
Hey, I'm good at the webinars. I haven't learned how to online DJ yet, so we'll get to that. We'll get to that eventually. Just as a reminder to everybody, please check out our Facebook page, which is listed at the bottom of the slide that you may be able to see me circling with my cursor here. That's really the best way that we have been getting information out to folks. Our email address should be on there as well. If not, it's just the pghmbaa at gmail.com. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about anything that we talked about today, or even introductions to some of the speakers. I'm sure in the right setting that we could arrange that for folks.
Conversely, we haven't finalized our presenter list for November 16th. So if anybody out there thinks they can add some value to what we're doing, please feel free to send it through to that email, or hit us on Facebook and message.
And Marcus, I don't think you mentioned this. The November 16th event will be free.
Yeah, everything's free. So sorry, I said everything's free about everything else.
Sure.
I didn't state the obvious. Everything we do from now on is free. We find the ways to fund it. If there are any back end costs, we pick them up. We're not like doing weird ads or anything. We do things because we care. Our labor's free. There's no cost for anything.
And if you were able to listen to us for 45 minutes here, that should be a slight preview of the November 16th event. And I think I just backed out the presentation, but I believe we are almost out of time, Marcus.
Yep.
All right. I'll stop sharing my screen here. Hopefully, if I can get rid of that infinite loop there. There we go.
All right. So I'm assuming we just hang out till 45. So again, any topics of interest, Adam, that we haven't already discussed today?
Any topics of interest? No, we are seeking sponsors though for the November 16th event. We are big fans of in-kind sponsorship as well.
Exactly, and that's plus. But yeah, very basic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I really can't. I can't say it enough that and it still impresses me that when I say we, I mean mostly Marcus. Emailed these folks and said, hey, you don't know who I am. Can you give me an hour of your time on a Saturday? And that got us off and running. And, once we had that confidence, like I said, kind of just fell into place. So,
yeah. I mean, we're talking also at a presentation today, Adam, that probably has 80 different speakers or something across.
Sure. We are not by any means the only source of knowledge.
This is probably small fry, and these guys have they just probably maxed it out. But
hey, fake it until you make it, isn't that the?
But we are very much focusing on that November presentation as being a recurrence event where we bring in as many presenters that are available from the previous stuff back into the mix. So I can't specifically say all of the people I mentioned today will be present, but 2/3 of them will be, plus new ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, really trying to accepting that 2021 is not going to be. It's certainly not going to be what we are used to as normal. In the craft beer industry. So, kind of, like I said, looking forward to that, both in the sense of, excited for what 2021 is going to bring and, what opportunities it might present, but also, just literally looking forward to it and, figuring out how we're all going to continue to do do these jobs in a different landscape. So, and I can keep talking for 15 more 15 more seconds. So again, thank you again to Craft Beer Professionals for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew, for agreeing to participate in our upcoming event in November.
yes. And now we have more contact info, so he can't get away from us now. So I think he's got or I think we just leave. I think is all right.
After you.
All right. Thanks again, everybody.
Indeed. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.